Hello and welcome. Diagrams are frequently used to represent and summarize and explain ideas and concepts and processes, and they help with memorization and communication and explanation. So diagrams are everywhere. However, not everyone can understand every diagram, and some people might find it difficult to understand certain diagrams, particularly those which are about the ideas or processes or concepts outside the domain of their expertise. So in this video, I will show you how you can use ChatGPT and Gemini to understand different types of diagrams. I have chosen 4 diagrams for the purpose of this demonstration. The first one, this one, is rather easy to understand for anyone. However, some people who are not familiar with these things might wonder what this H1, H2, H3, etc. are, but everyone can somehow understand that these are some concepts, and these arrows show the direction of the relationship. Okay, then we have another diagram which is relatively more complex, and it is not as readily understandable as the previous one. Then we have another diagram which is even more complex and a bit more technical, and then we have a diagram which is really very complex. So I'll feed these diagrams one by one, first to ChatGPT and then to Google's Gemini, and we will see how these tools explain these diagrams. So let's begin with ChatGPT and the first diagram. So I have opened a new chat. I'm using the paid version right now because I have exhausted my quota of free version. However, you can also do the same in the free version. Okay. So I will go to this button here and choose to upload from computer, and then choose the diagram I want to explain, and I will simply ask ChatGPT to explain this diagram. Okay, let's see what it does. It is processing, and then it comes up with the explanation. This diagram represents a conceptual model linking various factors affecting trust in government. Here is a detailed explanation of relationships and hypotheses presented. Performance management. Hypothesis 1, PM directly influences managerial quality and government effectiveness. Then H2, then decentralization or delegation of authority, then coordination initiative. Then it summarizes that these are H1, H2, H3, H4, and then it explains key concept PM, and then it tells us what is performance management, processes and strategies used to monitor and improve organizational performance. Let's say we don't understand what a conceptual model is or what a hypothesis is. We can ask follow-up questions about these. So I'm going to ask, what is a conceptual model? What is a conceptual model? Explain in easy terms. A conceptual model is a simplified way of representing how different ideas or concepts are related to each other. Okay, now it is providing a very simple explanation of what a conceptual model is. Here is an easy way to understand it. There is a purpose, components, and visual representation, and then it gives us an example to further help us understand this, and then it tells us why use it for clarity, communication, and analysis. So this is really good. Now let's see how Gemini explains this. I have opened a new chat here, and I will also go and select the diagram, upload it here, and ask it to explain this diagram. Let's see what it does. It is processing, and once it says it has processed, it will come up with an explanation. Certainly, let's break down the diagram you sent. This appears to be a research model and hypothesis. Overall structure, it is conceptual model showcasing relationships between various factors that potentially influence trust in government. Then it goes on to tell us what variables are there, and then there is hypotheses 1 to 5, then interpretation, and then limitations of the diagram. So you can see this explanation or interpretation is rather shorter as compared to ChatGPT's interpretation. However, we can also ask follow-up questions. For example, let's ask this time, what is a hypothesis? Let's say we don't know what a hypothesis is, and we will ask it to explain what a hypothesis is. A hypothesis is an educated guess or prediction about something. It is a tentative explanation for a phenomenon that can be tested through research. Key characteristics are examples and importance of hypotheses. We can also ask, why do we need a conceptual model? If we really want to understand what these models are and why we are using this, why do we can ask questions like this. Why do we need a conceptual model? A conceptual model is essentially a simplified representation of a complex system or process, and then it tells us the reasons, understanding complex system, communication and collaboration, problem solving and decision making, research and development, design and development, blah blah blah. Okay, so both are good at explaining this diagram. However, ChatGPT is providing a better explanation or more detailed explanation. Now let's try the next diagram. So I'm going to upload the next diagram. This is a slightly more complex diagram, and we'll feed this to ChatGPT and ask again to explain this diagram. Okay. The diagram represents a conceptual model for managing and implementing change within an organization. It outlines the key steps and components necessary for successful change. Key components and steps are need for change, vision, strategy, team development, two phases, and then there are two phases of change management, those being readiness for change and implementing change, and then there is another factor, continuous component, effective communication, and then it provides a summary. So we can go and see that this is actually a change management. This diagram is about change management. There is readiness for change, implementing change, and this continuous factor here is effective communication. So let's see, if you don't understand what these arrows represent, I mean, let's ask, why is there a double-headed arrow between 3 and 4? Let's say we don't understand why is this arrow there. So we can ask this follow-up question, why is there a double-headed arrow between 3 and 4? The double-headed arrow between 3, change agent system and team development, indicates a bidirectional relationship between these two components. Here is what it signifies: interdependence and interaction, feedback loop, continuous improvement, blah blah blah, practical examples, summary. Now let's see. So this is also good explanation. Now let's try Gemini. Again, we will go to this button here, choose this diagram, feed it to Gemini and ask it to explain the diagram. Okay, it is going to explain this diagram. Certainly, let's break down the diagram you sent. The title of the diagram appears to be Organizational Change Framework for Lean Manufacturing, although we cannot see that actually here. Let's see if we can see that title here. I don't think that title is there. It is using its existing knowledge to infer that this is about the Organizational Change Framework for Lean Manufacturing. Then it says that overall structure, it is a circular model showcasing various stages involved in implementing organizational change. Then it goes on to list down those changes. Then there is interpretation, limitation. It is saying nothing about those two parts, which are readiness for change and implementing change. Okay, so again, Gemini's explanation is shorter and less detailed. Let's ask the same question there. Why is there a double-headed arrow between 3 and 4? Let's see what answer does it give. A double-headed arrow typically signifies a reciprocal or interdependent relationship between two elements. In the context of your organizational change framework, the double-headed arrow between change agent system, that is 3, and team development 4, suggests a mutual influence and reliance. And then it goes on to break down this interaction. Change agent system influences team development, and team development influences change agent system. Again, as you can see, this explanation is not very much detailed as ChatGPT's interpretation. Okay, but the interpretation provided by both the tools is good enough, and it helps us understand these diagrams. Now let's move to the third diagram, which is slightly more technical and complex. So let's see. Let's feed this diagram and ask the same question again. Explain this diagram. Okay. There seems to be some problem. Okay, it seems that it has run into some issue, and let's try again. While it loads, okay, it has loaded. So let's feed that diagram again and ask the same question, that is, explain this diagram. Okay. The diagram illustrates electron transport chain, a crucial part of cellular respiration that takes place in the inner mitochondrial membrane. The ETC is responsible for producing ATP, that is adenosine triphosphate, the main energy currency of the cell, through a series of redox reactions. There are a lot of technical terms and we don't probably understand this. NADH and FADH2, these are electron carriers that denote electrons. Okay, so that donate electrons to ETC. NADH donates electrons to complex 1, while FADH2 donates electrons to complex 2. Okay. But this is again a lot of technical stuff which we don't understand. So we can ask a follow-up question, that I have no background in biology. Please explain to me in simple non-technical terms. And let's copy this prompt, as we will give the same prompt to Gemini. Okay. Let's see what sort of explanation does it come up with now. So occasionally ChatGPT gives you two responses to choose one from. So this seems rather good, so I'll choose this one. So here is what it has to say. Let's break it down in simple terms. What is electron transport chain? Electron transport chain is like a factory inside your cells that makes energy. Here is how it works. Ingredients for energy are these. Then factory workers are several machines or complexes, like complex 1, complex 2, and 3, 4. How it works: machine 1 takes energy from NADH battery and starts moving particles to one side of barrier. And then there is energy transport, and then final stage and making energy. Now it has actually made it very simple and even interesting. So we can use this summary to understand what is going on here. Now let's feed this diagram to Gemini and see how it explains the same diagram. Okay. Explain this diagram and let's see what kind of explanation it gives. Certainly, let's break down diagram you have provided. Key components are mitochondrial matrix, inner mitochondrial membrane, intermembrane space, and NADH2. Again, this is other technical explanation which we don't understand. So I'll give it the same prompt. I have no background in biology. Please explain to me in simple non-technical terms, and let's see what kind of explanation it gives us now. So again, this has come up with the same factory analogy as ChatGPT. This factory, imagine a factory that makes energy. This factory is called mitochondria and it is inside your cells. The energy it makes is called ATP and it is like the fuel your body uses. To make ATP, factory uses a special conveyor belt called electron transport chain. Okay, this is really good explanation. Although again, as compared to ChatGPT, this explanation is rather brief, but this is good. So I personally think that in case of this diagram, Gemini is providing a better explanation, more interesting and easier to understand explanation. Okay, so now let's try the last diagram, which is really very complex, and it is about complex numbers, by the way. So let's feed that diagram and ask ChatGPT to explain. Explain this diagram again. Okay. This diagram visualizes the complex function where z is the complex number. The plot shows both real part, that is re, and the imaginary part, im, a function in a three-dimensional space, and these are the axes and complex numbers and function and surface representation and intersecting surface, and then there is the real part and simplified explanation. As we previously asked it to provide simplified explanations, it has now without asking, added a simplified explanation. Think of z as a point on a flat plane like piece of paper where each point has real part, left right position, and imaginary part up down position. the function f of z is equal to z square plus 1, takes each of these points and transforms them into a specific way, and then there are more details about this. So you see, this is we haven't told it what it is, but it has been able to explain what this really complex looking diagram is, and it has also made it tried to explain it in simple terms, but there is a limit to the simplicity you can bring to mathematics. It has to be, there is some element of technicality that is always going to remain there, but what is important is that it has explained the diagram, and we can ask the follow-up questions if we want. Now let's try the same diagram with Gemini and see how it explains. Okay. Explain this diagram. Okay. What is being shown? The diagram provides a visual representation of complex function. This function takes a complex number z as input and produces another complex number as output, and then it is breaking down the components, complex numbers, 3D graph, colored surfaces, axes, what the graph tells us, limitation of the visualization. So again, you see, ChatGPT didn't say anything about 3D graph or colored surfaces, what those are. So what is surprising here is that Gemini seems to be doing better in case of more complex diagrams. So this is something which is new to me, by the way, and I never thought about it like this, that Gemini is probably better at explaining more complex diagrams. So this is how you can use tools like ChatGPT and Gemini to explain diagrams, which is really important, and it is particularly useful for students or people who are trying to understand a subject and are encountering different type of diagrams. If they don't understand those diagrams, they can simply feed those diagrams to ChatGPT or Gemini and ask whatever questions they want about these diagrams. They can specify their level of understanding or domain of understanding, and ask these tools to come up with explanation that are understandable to you. So thank you for watching this video. To watch more videos like this, please subscribe to the channel.